Hey, g'day. Right now, I'm on location, Kangaroo Island, South Australia, filming for What's Up Down Under. I just got contacted by the events organiser for this event, and they asked me if I could come along and have a chat to you lot about how to get into camping. And I thought, it's an interesting question, isn't it? How do you get into camping? And then it come to me. So this is what they've asked me to talk about, and I did think about it, and this is the best answer I could come up with. If you want to get into camping, the simplest way to do it is to go outside and then don't go back inside for a few days. And guess what? You've been camping. Pretty simple, isn't it? I was fortunate enough to have grown up in a family that camped and travelled for fun. That was our lifestyle. That was our culture. So from my earliest memories, you know, if it was g'day folks, how are you? Yeah, good, thank you. Oh, other than I've got a bit of a crook hip at the moment, a couple of other ailments if you want to talk about it for a while. Hello, how are you? We've got more coming. This is quite good. The first day I did this show here, I had 12 and a half people. I did it down the bottom there in the paddock, and there was a few people sitting there in that eating area, and I didn't know if they'd come to listen or whether they'd come for lunch. So I said, if you're here to listen, can you put your hand up? And I started counting them, and I got to 11, and then a lady walked past pushing a pram, and I went 12 and a half. That's how I got a half. It was only a baby. But she liked the show, I think. I asked, and she didn't answer, but she was only little. So, yeah, that's how you get into camping. Go outside, stay for a few days. Yeah, like I say, we camped for fun. We started off, we had a little tent with a centre pole, remember those ones? And later on, for Christmas, Mum bought Dad, but I think he bought it himself, the tent mahal, the big old canvas jobby. 2 rooms in it, a little bit of canvas across the middle, so Mum and Dad had their own area for the privacy, you know. Didn't stop the noise button. It was like, hey, Dad, has Mum got asthma again? She never was an asthmatic except when we went camping. I don't know what was going on there. I must ask one day. So anyway, that's what we did. And we'd holiday in that tent mahal every Christmas. So I grew up in a town called Maryborough in Queensland. And Harvey Bay is just near there, half an hour away, 40 minutes, something like that. So they'd take the tent down and they'd set it up at the end of when we broke up school. And we'd spend the whole 6 weeks in a caravan park down there. And the reason we did that was Dad could go to work still. So my dad was a chippy. My mum worked at a chemist shop, just a normal Aussie family. Well, whatever normal is now, you know. Only 2 genders, probably a boring family, you know. Anyway, that was what we did. So I grew up doing it, and then during the year, we would just go on camping trips, just a weekend away or something like that. But I do recall when I was about 12 years old, my mum and dad decided to lash out, treat the family, and do something that everyone else wanted to do. We're going on an overseas holiday to a exotic location called New Zealand. It's kind of like going to Australia for a holiday with different coloured money. And I know when I look back now that my mum and dad would have gone without in the lead up to that holiday. Perhaps for a year they would have gone without things to save enough money to take us kids over there and treat them to this experience of a lifetime. And I'm not cheapening it. It was a great trip, I'm sure. But I cannot remember what we did on that trip. But if you ask me what I did when I went on camping trips with my mum and dad and my family, I could tell you every part of it because that's where my memories come from. And the time I spent with my mum and dad and even my sisters, because we didn't get along all that well, was what I refer to now as good, wholesome family time, where there was no distractions. We sat around the fire at night. We talked, we laughed. We fished during the day and we maybe played Spotlight at night or something like that. But it was stuff, we did everything ourselves. And the memories I have, even the negative memories, like when it rained that much that we got flooded out, you still laugh about it now. But what I did on that trip to New Zealand, no idea. So I've been fortunate enough, as I said, to grow up with that as a part of my culture. But ultimately, super fortunate to be able to follow that in this stage of my life as a career. And so now I do it for a job. And even when I'm not doing it for a job, I still do it. I live in a caravan permanently. I split up with my last missus about 3 years ago. I've had a couple. I've got a collection. They're all good, too good for me. And I threw all my stuff, as I refer to it now, in storage. And I grabbed a caravan and I thought I'll jump in that and travel around until I find where I want to settle again. And I haven't found it. 3 years. But I figure I'm not looking real hard because I've been to a lot of beautiful places in the last 3 years. And the thought now for me, personally, about going back to, in inverted commas, a normal lifestyle is not attractive at all. And what I call a normal lifestyle, I'll describe to you now. It's when you wake up on a Saturday morning, you go outside, you get that mower going, that takes a while, breaks your soul, and then you mow the lawn, and then you hose the lawn clippings off it, and you put it in the garage. Then you roll the car out on the driveway, you wash him, you chamois him, you polish him, you put him back in the garage, you go inside just in time to sit down on the lounge chair and watch some bloke doing what you'd rather be doing on the telly. And that's normal. For most people, that's the Saturday routine. Now that I've worked out that there's another option for that routine, I can't put myself back into that world. And maybe one day I will, but for right now, I am living my best life. And that life is out there on the road, travelling from places to place, meeting people, chatting to people, and learning about things, because that's what you do while you're doing it. If anyone has any questions as we go through, fire at will. It's funny. Does anyone follow my Facebook page or Instagram page? Yeah, sorry. It gets a bit rugged at times, you know. There's always a reason for things I say, you know. It's about prompting thoughts in people, or laughter. Quite often I'm looking for laughter. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses. Some people get offended, some people don't. But when I had to do this presentation, I thought, I'll go and have a look through some of my memes I put on Facebook and see what's relevant to explaining why I love the culture of camping, travelling, caravanning. And I found this one. It's one of my favourite photos, and it is relevant. You know, there's nothing better than sitting around a fire, is there? You can have the roughest day in the world. You don't need conversation. You don't need stimulation. It gives you everything. And I do believe, this is my opinion, therefore worth something to me, worthless to anyone else, because they've all got their own, and so have you. That fire is the essence of community. And I get quite disappointed when I hear things in the media about a council fining someone for having a fire pit in their backyard and the kids roasting marshmallows or something like that, because we don't let people have fires in our council area or whatever. Because even if you go back to the days of the cavemen, I didn't live there, but I got some of the mindset of them, some would say. But if you were lucky enough, or they were lucky enough to get a fire going, people gathered, and nothing has changed. You go out in the bush and light a fire and someone will be coming past, and the next thing you know, they camp not too far from you, and they come over and say, do you mind if I sit next to your fire? Before you know it, you've got conversation with someone and you're learning, and no one ever gets upset around a fire. Sometimes you don't need to talk, but it certainly is a therapist. But that photo, when I found it, it brought back some good memories, and that's the good thing about when we go camping and we've got the old memory bank. So if you look up the top, above the R, there's a little bright light there. So there's actually another one that's actually obscured by the R, but that photo was taken in the middle of the Simpson Desert, and it was a moment in history that no one realised we were capturing. But at that night, and I think for about 2 or 3 nights, Venus and Jupiter were both visible in the sky, and that's actually Venus. So you can see Venus up there, Jupiter's behind the thing, and Simon, you've done very well, my friend. ladies and gentlemen. Simon Imberger, he's one of our cameramen. And we've got a bit of an unwritten rule when we're out on the road. If anyone speaks of planets, someone will shoehorn in the word Uranus. The 15-year-old boy is alive and well in Simon, and I'm surprised that he didn't say, I can see Uranus in that chair you're sitting in. Yeah, he was about to. Well done, Simon, for being very mature today. There's more irony in that photo because that was taken, as I said, in the middle of the Simpson Desert in what was probably for me the most personally rewarding work journey I've ever done, because what had happened at the time, I was working for Pat Callanan. So back in the days, remember you used to get the glossy magazines and they'd have a DVD on the cover. So you read the magazine, then you could watch your DVD. Anyone got a DVD player still? Oh, I was going to bring some DVDs and sell them. I should have. There's 3 here. Yeah, they're not of me or anything, just old DVDs. I got. Yeah, I was going to put 50 cents on them and see how it went. But so the morning of that photo, and I'll tell you more about that journey shortly too. I'd done a piece to camera. I'll go back. I do jump around a bit in a conversation. It keeps everyone wondering, you know. So the reason we did that trip was that the Simpson Desert, there's one main track across. It's called the French Line. It's on the southern end of the Simpson. Anyone done the French Line? Yep. So it was becoming a bit of a highway. A lot of people travelling across. It wasn't as challenging as it had once been. And so the more adventurous were pushing out into the desert all on their own. And they were causing a few problems. They were doing damage. And ultimately the biggest problem was that some were getting lost and needing to be rescued. So Pat teamed up with the guys from HEMA, and they organised that they were going to put another line on the map. At the northern end of the Simpson, on a route that was first pushed through in 1936 by an explorer called Cecil Madigan. And he went across with a team of 19 camels, and he camped 24 times from Old Endado Station in the Northern Territory, and his last camp was which I like his style, the last camp, the latitude and longitude, was the front bar of the Birdsville Hotel. I've camped in there a couple of times myself, but they'll generally throw you out if you fall asleep in your chair, apparently. Cecil got away with it. So we left Old Endado to go across. Now, I'm sorry, was I putting you to sleep? Oh, he's already heard it. When were we in Birdsville? Have a good afternoon. Good on you. So they decided that if we don't push another track through, these people are going to wander all over the desert. So the Madigan line was decided as the route. So we went out there with the film crew and we mapped, and the HEMA guys, and we mapped and put that line on the map. So now people are going across the Madigan line. And one day it'll end up being as busy, I suppose, as the French line, but it's a little bit more challenging. It's a little bit more remote. Well, it's actually far more remote, and it's not that much more challenging. There's some big dunes out there. Anyway, we're doing the trip. And this one morning, the producer on the shoot said, I want you to do a piece to camera, which means I'm going to talk to the camera, about not wasting firewood. We're in the desert. It's a limited resource. So I stood up there, cleared my throat and said something like, when you come out here, think about your fellow travellers that are following you. I understand you need to cook your food, and I understand you need the warmth and comfort of a fire, but don't make it too big and don't let it burn all night. Burn what you need to do and then go to bed. So there's plenty of wood there for those who follow in your footsteps. Very responsible, caring words. That was the start of one of the toughest days we had on that whole trip, and we were bogged to the eyeballs most of the day. And at about 7 o'clock that night, we had the last vehicle almost out of a bog on a big dune, and I'd already got out. I was over the top. The producer said, you push forward and find somewhere to camp. I went, right up, no worries. So I rolled down between a couple of dunes, and there's that dead tree sitting there. It's a pretty big tree for in the desert too. You don't get a lot that big, but it's dead. Dead as Julius Caesar. They know, been gone for years. Anyway, I pulled up next to it, and the bloke that was in the car with me started getting swags out. And I went and started picking some sticks up around that tree and pulling them up around the base of the tree. And that night, we burnt that thing to the ground, every last bit of it. But when you're out there, don't do as I do as I say. There was actually method in my madness, as much as it was madness. Hello, how are you? Come in, sit down. I've been counting the heads. I need all the numbers I can get. They pay me per person. So the method in my madness was that morale was at an all-time low. It had been a tough day. We had got to the stage in the journey where we had to ration beer. We had 3 cans left per person per night from there to when we got into Birdsville. And I made a monumental leadership decision when I saw that dead tree that we were going to raise morale that night. So what I did was I made that fire, and as every other vehicle trickled into that camp, they fell out the doors laughing, saying, "What have you done, you silly little bugger?" And then I announced that we were going to drink every last drop of beer we had with us. We checked how much fuel was in every vehicle. We siphoned it out of the tanks, put it all into one vehicle, and the next morning, the Mercy Dash to Birdsville by 2 people began to pick up more fuel and more beer. We came back to that spot and continued the journey that you saw in the DVD of a lot of responsible people crossing the desert. But rip a day. I hadn't actually remembered that story until I looked at this photo the other day, and I laughed. And that's, like I say, the thing about what we do when we leave out. I always say time spent outside of your comfort zone is time well spent. And I'll stand by that statement, because it's moments like that in the middle of nowhere where friendships, long-lasting, lifetime friendships are made and memories are certainly made. That whole trip, I'll tell you, I'll stick on this trip for a moment. Just wait, I've got to show you something. I thought I'd just chime back in for a minute, because I reckon by about now you're probably sick of me up on the stage, jawing off, bumping me gums and telling you some story that you're not even finding interesting. So I thought we'd have a quick break, and I'll give you a bit of a look at the ocean here at Kangaroo Island. Not a bad view, eh? If you get into camping, you might find yourself in a spot like this. You never know your luck. There you go, a bit of meaningless stuff. I'll do that. So that trip, I witnessed something that I'll never forget, and one day I would love to actually go out and try and document. I'm not quite sure how I'd do it because I'm not that creative. But what happened, when we started that journey, there was about 4 vehicles, I think, from memory. One was a crew car. They had my vehicle and another vehicle that had mechanical gear in it, and then we had the producer and director in another car. So off we went. The 2 camera operators we had were young guys out of Sydney, city boys. First time they'd ever worked for Pat. They knew how to run a camera, no doubt about that, but they'd never done anything like this. And no one had really thought about that too much, I don't think. I didn't get involved in the planning, but the first time I saw them raise their city boy heads was about 15 minutes out of Old Daddo's station. Now, that trip, I can't remember the exact time frame on it. I think it was about 12 days, something like that, which is far longer than you need to do that trip, but as long as you need to film that trip, because it's quite slow. There's a lot of do it again, stop, wait, all that rubbish. It's the technical part of making television that I call stuffing around, and it takes up a lot of time. Anyway, so we got 15 minutes into our almost 2-week trip when we lost mobile phone service. And no one had made the 2 young fellas aware that it was going to happen. So we all had communications in the form of UHFs, etc. And we had sat phones with us, everything we needed, but it wasn't helping them with their mobiles. And the call came across the UHF, my mobile phone stopped working. Mine too. And they said, when will we get phone service? Can we get phone service when we stop tonight? And look, if it was today, yeah, there's lots of ways we throw out a bloody Starlink and all these things today. We've got all the mod cons. I actually love it when nothing works because it's a good excuse to do nothing. But so I broke the news to them that we would get it again when we got to Birdsville. And they threw the toys out the cot, chucked a tantrum. declared how they needed their phones because that's how they get their emails and everything else that makes their life circulate. And I felt for them, but I laughed. And then that tantrum lasted probably a couple of days. They before they realised it wasn't going to help, and they were actually quite enjoying the time without the phone, as we all do when we get to put it down, and time without that thing's time well spent as well. But at the time, I didn't notice anything dramatic about this other than the little spectacle. About the same time, I started noticing a lot of questions. Like the first night, I said, we might pull up here and camp. And one of them said, are we allowed to camp here? And I said, I reckon we'll be all right. There's no one for about 400 Ks or something at that stage. Long way to a caravan park. So they went, no, we'll be all right, all good. And then they started asking questions like, what's the speed limit here? Fast as you want. And then one morning, one of them said to me, can I drive the crew car ahead, climb up on the roof, set the tripod up there, I want to get a shot of you driving across those sand dunes towards us. Am I allowed to do that? And I went, righto, we'll have a yarn. So I got everyone together and I said, there's no rules out here. But I didn't say it like Ivan Milat. That would have been a bit creepy. But I explained to them there are no rules, but there are repercussions. So if you want to drive up there and climb up on the roof and set up your tripod and get the shot of the century, you go right ahead. But if you fall off and you break your leg, here's how it is. From here, the nearest helicopter is going to be Birdsville. He's going to have to fly out, land, drop some fuel off, drive back, pick up more fuel, drive out, fuel up at the first one, come out a bit further, and he's going to have to do that about 6 times to get to where we are. And they're not doing it for a broken leg. So if you fall off and break your leg, we've got 1,100 sand dunes in front of us, and you're going to have a wild ride. But by all means, manage yourself. You make your own decisions. If you're superbly confident that you can climb up there, not fall off, or if you fall off, you're going to put a smile on your face with your broken leg, you go right ahead. Speed limit, drive as fast as you want to drive to the conditions and your ability, which often a young man struggles with. They get those two things mixed up. But basically, we can do whatever we want within reason. You can't just go out there and start murdering and that. Like I said, I didn't do it in a Milat voice. Anyway, so I saw that, and then I witnessed this thing, and again, I didn't really notice it at the time until we were nearly back in Birdsville. About 30 Ks out, your phone service kicks back in, and everyone's phone went, nit-it, 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 and everyone announces over the UHF, I've got phone service. And from there on, this group of people who over the last almost 2 weeks had turned themselves into a tight-knit team that supported each other, entertained each other, gave each other everything they needed to get them through that journey, turned back into their phones and put their face in there for about 6 hours and didn't even talk to each other. So what I had noticed, or what I had observed that I didn't realise until I got to Birdsville, was that I had witnessed a group of people become as free as you could possibly be in Australia today, completely making their own choices based on their abilities, their repercussions, the judgment probably of the rest of the team. If they did something stupid, they knew that the rest of the team would have pulled them into line. But they were as free as they'd ever been. 2 boys that had grown up in Sydney who had never made a choice in their life other than whether to ignore the sign that told them what to do or to go along with it. And that, for me personally, was a really refreshing thing to have seen. And like I say, I don't know how you document it, but I'd love to do a trip again and actually do it under the guise of saying, we're going to go and film this trip. But what you actually film is the transformation of these people from what they were to what they could be to what they were instantly. Like within minutes of having that phone back on, everyone changed. Does anyone have any questions? That's a photo of me. I don't know why it's there. That's me in the Simpson Desert. Probably it's that trip. know what? I could stand there looking at the ocean all day. You can't do that in your lounge room or sitting behind your desk at work, can you? The best way to do it is to get into camping. Then you can look at the ocean or a creek or a babbling brook or a desert or whatever it is you want to look at, and you've got something to sleep in while you're there. Your camping gear. It all makes sense, doesn't it? Anyone got any questions? When I first got into this job, I'd only been doing it for maybe a couple of years, and a mate of mine, he's a pretty clever fella, and he said to me, I don't know if you know, but you're starting to create a brand. He goes, what's that brand sort of stand for, you know? And I hadn't even thought about it because it wasn't my intention to do something like that. I just was fortunate enough to go out and get this job that everyone else wanted. And I was happy enough with that without having to use too much brain power. And so I sat down, I thought about it, and I thought, I reckon Macca, he stands for encouraging people or inspiring people, or both those things, to get out of their lounge chair, to get into their driving chair and go out and explore Australia. And so I still stand for that today. But I think I've expanded that a little bit now, and I think I'd like to say that I now like to inspire people to do that, but I also like to inspire people to do that to the next level and really go out there and live the lifestyle, to go and experience those freedoms I just spoke about, to take yourself out of your comfort zone. You don't have to go miles out of it, a little bit out of it, and go and smell that freedom again. It's still out there. You can just go and experience it whenever you want. So that's it for me. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I'll hang around here for a little bit if anyone has any questions that you didn't want to ask publicly, like the colour of my underwear, for instance. Have a great day, everyone.
Oh, that's a big and. For the Victorian Caravan and Camping Supershow, the biggest and best and the most exhibitors and the Adventure Zone and the Kids Zone and the RV Master Stage and lots more. And only $20. Melbourne Showgrounds, February 19 to 23. Tickets at caravanshow.com.au.